Welcome to The Explainer, where we take really complex topics and, well, we explain them. Today we are diving deep into something pretty wild, the human brain, and how it can be hacked.
All right, so here's what we're getting into. We're going to break down how the human mind can be influenced, drawing from some incredible insights by behavior expert Chase Hughes. First, we'll talk about why your brain has no firewall. Then we'll get into the two master keys that can unlock it. After that, we'll look at some, frankly, terrifying examples of this stuff out in the wild. And finally, we'll talk about how you can build up your own mental defenses. You ready? Let's go.
All right, first up, your brain has no firewall. And that leads us to a pretty startling idea. What if your mind isn't the fortress you imagine it to be?
So Chase Hughes says, I've studied how to access every loophole in the human brain. Now, this guy has trained people in the military and government, so he's not just talking theory. He sees the brain as an operating system. And like any OS, it's got bugs, it's got loopholes, and they can be exploited.
And here's the core of the problem. Our brains, the hardware we're all running, haven't really had a major update in thousands of years. They're built for surviving in a small tribe, watching out for tigers in the grass. They were not built to handle the psychological technology of the 21st century, things like targeted ads, social media, 24/7 news cycles. It's like we're running ancient software that just doesn't have a firewall for today's threats.
Okay, so if our brains are so vulnerable, then how does somebody actually get in? What are the master keys that unlock these loopholes?
Let's get into those keys. Hughes says there are two master keys that basically grant the fastest, most direct access to the human brain. The first one is something called novelty. Think about it. Our brains are on autopilot most of the day, right? We're running these little mental scripts for everything. Tying your shoes, driving to work, ordering coffee. But what happens when that script gets shattered? You hear police sirens right behind you. Or you're walking in a dead quiet forest and a big stick snaps nearby. Bam! Your brain just drops everything else and pours all of its focus into that one new, unexpected thing. That's novelty.
Okay, master key number 2, authority. This one is deep in our wiring. We have this powerful, almost unconscious instinct to follow a clear, confident signal. And what's really wild is that our ancient brain, it doesn't really care who's the smartest person in the room. It doesn't even care who has the best idea. It's looking for the most certain person. Because for millions of years of evolution, certainty meant survival.
But hold on, this isn't just about wearing a lab coat or having a fancy title. Hughes says real perceived authority is built on these 5 components. It's things like confidence, sure, but also discipline, leadership, even gratitude and enjoyment. For example, he talks about discipline. It's not just about looking the part. It's about having your life together behind the scenes, because that projects a kind of subconscious, gut-level trustworthiness. It makes your signal believable and followable.
So, now that we have the two master keys, novelty and authority, let's look at what happens when they're put to use. And some of these examples from the real world are pretty intense. Okay, look at this number. 67%. So, what on earth could this represent? Well, it's something genuinely shocking.
This is from the infamous Milgram experiment back in 1962, and it's the perfect chilling storm of novelty and authority. You've got ordinary people in a strange lab at Yale, that's the novelty. Then you have a guy in a lab coat telling them to keep going, that's authority. And the result? Look at this chart. A full 100% of people, 100%, administered what they believed was a potentially lethal shock. And that 67%, that's the number who went all the way to the 450-volt maximum, just because a guy in a coat told them to.
And it's not just about authority. The Asch conformity experiment showed us something else that's just as scary. People will literally deny the evidence of their own eyes just to fit in with a group. It proves that our brains are often hardwired to choose tribal agreement over objective truth. And you have to ask yourself, how is that vulnerability being exploited today on a massive scale with things like social media bots and manufactured outrage?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Because these tools, they're neutral. They're just levers in the brain. They can be used for good or for, well, not so good. Check this out. The exact same principles for indoctrinating someone into a cult, breaking down their old beliefs, isolating them, establishing absolute authority, are also used by elite coaches to build the world's best athletes. You create an alter ego, you break down their limiting beliefs. It's the same psychological playbook, just with a different goal.
And just to be clear, none of this is new. You can trace this psychological arms race back for decades. It started with post-war interrogation techniques in the 50s. Then it went deep underground in the 60s with CIA programs like MK Ultra, trying to literally create Manchurian candidates. And where is it today? Well, now it's out in the open. It's modern psyops, psychological operations happening at a massive scale on the internet, manipulating public opinion with artificial consensus.
Now, to bring this into the present day, Hughes points to the response to the COVID-19 pandemic as a massive case study. He highlights media headlines like this one from the LA Times, which says, "Mocking anti-vaxxers' COVID deaths is ghoulish, yes, but maybe necessary." And he argues that this is a clear example of using shame and tribal pressure as tools to influence behavior and enforce compliance.
So, okay, that's a lot, and it's pretty heavy stuff. The big question is, how do you spot this happening in your own life? How can you start building that mental firewall we talked about? So how can you tell if you're in the middle of a psyop? Hughes lays out a few telltale signs. It's usually designed to trigger a strong emotional response, not a logical one. It creates this false feeling that everyone agrees. It paints a really simple us versus them picture. But here's his #1 rule of thumb, his big heuristic. If an opinion needs people to be silenced, shamed, or deplatformed in order to survive, you are probably looking at a psychological operation. Because a genuinely strong idea, it doesn't fear debate, it welcomes it.
And this, right here, this is your personal firewall diagnostic, a key defense. Ask yourself this honestly. If you look at an issue and you can't see anything wrong with your side, and you can't see anything right with the other side, you have almost certainly been manipulated. One of the most powerful things you can do is to actively, deliberately look for the valid points in the arguments you disagree with. That simple act is a massive defense against having your own objectivity hijacked. Because once you start seeing these patterns, novelty, authority, tribal pressure, you can't unsee them. This isn't just about old science experiments or big global events. This is about the ads you see every day, the political messaging you hear, the way your own social media feed is created. It's all around you. So the real question is, now that you know the code, will you see the world differently?